Hello and welcome to Moving Conversations. I'm your host, James Kern with Delicate Moving. And this is, I guess, what we're calling our pilot show. It's our first show. And we got started with Lyndon Wilson over at The Difference several years ago in doing realtor training. And that's kind of how Lyndon and I met a few years ago. And we've been a sponsor. Delicate Moving's been a sponsor for about the last year, 8 months to a year on The Difference. And Lyndon has now changed The Difference to a platform for hosts like me, sponsors like me, where we are hosting our own show. And so I am very excited today. This is our first show, as I mentioned, and the title is Moving Conversations. And you would think that that might have something to do with moving, since I'm the owner of Delicate Moving. And we will talk about moving a little bit, but this is mostly a show about moving people forward in a positive direction in their relationships, whether that be their marriages or they're dating someone, with their children, at work, with family members or friends. And so we're going to dive deep. We're going to get into what self-awareness looks like, what our emotions look like, and how we see other people and how we connect with them. At Delicate Moving, we've always wanted to do things differently. One of our mottos has always been, even in our advertising, has been Delicate Moving. We handle things differently, and moving is a pretty basic business when it comes to you're moving furniture, you're moving boxes, you're getting people from point A to point B. But there is a way of doing things differently so that people are getting value for choosing you as a moving company. And so when I thought about this show, I thought, we want to do something different that is not just, spending an hour talking about networking or talking about how to prepare for your move. I didn't feel like that would be very engaging after the, one or two shows. It wouldn't be compelling. And so I started thinking, how can we bring value to people just like we do in our moving business, by sending out full-time movers, no day labor, no temporary help. And so when it came to this podcast, relationships are really important to me. I think everyone can connect with, how to have better relationships, how to get along better with their spouse, their boyfriend or girlfriend, how to connect better with their coworkers and their children. And so we thought, let's bring real content that's going to dive in. There really are no boundaries. And excuse me. And let's just get right to it about talking about our relationships. So that's what we're going to do. I hope you'll join us each and every week, Tuesdays at 1:00. And we'll dive in today. That's going to be our purpose. I'd like to introduce to you our guests, Darren and April Mabrey. Darren and April are dear friends of mine that I had the opportunity and privilege of getting to know over the last year through a Bible fellowship class at our church. Darren is actually our teacher and brings great content every week. And then, of course, he yields to his better half, April, and we really get deep with April. But I'm going to get out of the way. I can just tell you, you're going to really get to enjoy getting to know them. And April, let's start with you. Introduce yourself, give us a little background, and then we'll go to Darren.
All right. Well, thanks, James. This is really fun. Thanks for inviting us to be a part of this. My name's April. I'm married to Darren. We've got twin girls. I work for the probably second largest software company in the world. And part of my job is to be an executive coach. And basically, when people ask me what I do, I always answer, I try to teach people how not to be a jerk. And so that's kind of what I bring to the table. So I have a lot of different certifications, but we spend a lot of time talking about personality styles, the way that people tend to work, the way that people see themselves, different levels of self-awareness. And so we use a lot of tools in my job with that. We use DISC, we use Myers-Briggs, we use Strength Finders, we use emotional intelligence. So I have a lot of certifications, but I think at the end of the day, it's just about how do you learn to speak to people in the way that they're comfortable listening? And that's just kind of, having good relationships is part of that. Is it's not always about me and what I need. Sometimes it is. And it depends on what you struggle with, because you will see people struggle with both. But that's what I do at work. And so, Darren and I both have used that in our relationship with our family and children. And then we've brought that to our church class where James and we're all together. So it's been really interesting. It's definitely a passion of mine. So I appreciate you having us on here to talk about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Darren, go ahead.
Well, hey, thanks again, James, like April said, for having us on, and kind of considering our what we're doing on Sundays and stuff important enough to share. It's been broader than that. I guess the quick on me, April and I have been married for 27 years. We're coming up on. We've actually been through a lot of hard stuff in a marriage, like most people have been. Anyone who's been married 27 years, and I would say right off the bat, where all this got our attention was in 2004, when our marriage all but ended. And how do you get back from that, and all of the things that we had to stop down and learn, that we just did not know how to do life very well. And so my background, we actually we met and got married in St. Louis in '93, and then we moved in 1993, then moved down to Dallas, and shortly thereafter I started attending Dallas Seminary. So that's where I did my postgraduate work. And then I am currently also employed by the second largest software company in the world. So April and I we don't work together, but our paychecks have the same name on the top. And so I am actually a recipient through kind of the things that April has taught professionally. I'm on the sales end. And so April does a lot of enablement of sales, and it's really important, everything that she's taught, and we can talk more about how did you take, where did this intersect, Darren? Where did your marriage, where did the church stuff and the work stuff, where did all that kind of intersect so that we end up on a show like this? But it's really, really important as we get into some of these subjects. You're going to see where they have so many applications throughout all of these different areas of life. And so when it comes to a lot of this, so one of the things that April and I use when we're working with couples and when we're having conversations like what we're doing right now, is we use one particular assessment that that really seemed to kind of help knock down some walls and a place to begin a conversation, some of the difficult conversation. And I think that's kind of where we can start off here, maybe on this show, is talking a little bit about that. It's a way for us to get to know ourselves better, and then that helps us understand other people better, and that makes communication get a lot easier. So anyway, so that's how we got here.
Yeah, and so I would add to that, when we first were in class, and our class is on marriage, and it's called Revitalize. And so when we were first in class, after some introductory classes where we played some silly games to get to know each other and all of that stuff, some icebreakers, Darren and April introduced DISC, D-I-S-C. And Darren made a good point, April made a good point, and that is when you're dating someone, you're focusing on everything you have in common, because you like them. There's that romance, there's the newness of it, and so you're looking for all the reasons this is going to work. Right. Most people are, at least. And so you can sometimes be blinded, or you choose not to look or see or really dig deep into your differences, because people, it seems, are afraid of the differences, because if you have differences, then that means we can't be together. And, one thing I believe, and I know Darren and April would agree, is, marriage is not about compatibility necessarily. I mean, you want to be compatible in ways, but being compatible is not necessarily what makes the marriage work. It's understanding and respecting one another, just like in a business relationship. If I respect my coworker, then we can work together. If I don't, and I don't want to help them achieve their goals, then it's going to be difficult for me to manage them, and vice versa. Yeah. And so we dug into this deal called DISC, and that is used in business arenas, and so business settings, to help people get along with one another, understanding their clients, how to reach their clients better. And so Darren and April brought this to our marriage class, and it's really neat because as you'll learn, you start learning about yourself, about your own style. Then you learn about your spouse, and you start understanding, okay, this is why we may not connect in certain ways, because we are now these are these differences that I talked about, that all of a sudden, now that you're married, now the differences start popping up, and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't understand this. I didn't know this when we were dating. And they didn't change. You just put on a different set of glasses when you got married and started seeing them differently. So April, I think it would be best, probably since you have the most experience with this, kind of explain to our audience here what DISC is all about, and then we can, kind of get into that.
Yeah. So, one thing before we jump into that made me think is, the reason we do this in a corporate setting, and the reason this is important for businesses to understand, not just our business, but even small businesses, medium-sized businesses, or anything where you're working on teams, is to appreciate the differences. So, like you said, we tend to focus on what's the same, but the real power and the real kind of, unmined jewels are understanding what the differences are. And what we do is we try to build what we call dream teams. And dream teams are one of every type, right? Because for every buying style, there's a selling style, and vice versa. And if we go in and we're speaking to our customers, or we're speaking to our families, or we're speaking to our teams in the way that makes sense to us, and we only have one representative, then we're missing about 75% of our customer base, right? So we want to make sure, to your point, not only in relationships, but in business too, that you appreciate the differences, and that you as a business owner are looking at filling those gaps. That if you are an extreme style, and we'll talk about the styles here in a second, but if you are a style who's very siloed in the way that you view things, the best thing for you to do is to build those dream teams around you, and to be able to delegate and listen and take into consideration the views of those other styles, because now you're spreading to 100% of your customer base, right? Not just, you're really going to hit it off with about 23% of humanity. But guess what? There's a whole bunch of other people that what you're saying is going right over their head, or they don't want to use you as a business because you come off in a certain way, either too strong, too weak, indecisive, demanding, whatever it might be. And then also, just from a business standpoint, we have found that it's important for us to train our managers and leaders in this, because the number one reason that people leave their job is because of their frontline manager. Their immediate manager, the relationship that they have with them is perceived as not good. And so people quit, and you just get churn. So it's really important. And we found, we put a lot of money toward this, teaching these managers, business owners, how to understand the other styles and value them. And it's the same in relationships. So to your point, DISC, right? DISC. You can go online. Go ahead. Yep.
But, April, I thought before you jump into that, if I could just jump in real quick and just kind of give just a little bit of background, because it was really interesting how all of this came together in our lives. Okay, so I told you, we were kind of, we hit some marital struggles in 2004, and I'll use the word struggles because that sounds nicer. But
turbulence. How about turbulence?
No, turbulence is fine. Probably the word impact would be more
right.
descriptive. But so here we are trying to find our way out of that, and we couldn't do it alone. We had to do it with other people, and it's really hard work. because you're working with another person, and there's a lot of mistrust and a lot of hurt, a lot of stuff going on there. Okay, well, so as we started kind of slowly making our way out of that, every person that we would run into, and I'm using hyperbole here, but it seemed like it, like every couple that we would meet were having the same problems, or they were about to get divorced, or they were having marriage problems. Yeah. So it was kind of like, we're literally a step or two ahead of them on the path. And then now, it was just like one person after another, one couple after another being brought in their lives. Well, about that same time, the company we work for, a little more background on kind of what I was saying. We globally kind of hit a wall, or I would say at least inside of our culture, where if you would line up all of the sales guys, they really all kind of looked alike. If they were a pitcher, they all kind of threw fastballs, and that was it. It was just like, we're going to come in. There was we're obviously an exceptionally successful company, very, very profitable, very powerful company. And there was kind of this attitude like it's a big deal that we're here for you, Mr. Customer, and it's your pleasure to get to talk to us. And
a lot of confidence.
Yeah, there's a lot of confidence, and it was like, we're going to now enter into a sales cycle the way we want to have that sales cycle run. Well, that worked, like April said, for maybe 25% of the customer base, but there was a lot of different varying types of people in the roles that we were engaging in sales. Well, the point of it is that we could realize real quickly, we're not as successful as we should be. So that's when they started saying, we've got to rethink how this is happening. And so it went from, we're going to sell the way we're comfortable selling, to we're going to now sell the way our customers are comfortable in buying. Okay, now that brought a whole new set of awarenesses and skill sets that the sales teams had to have that they didn't have. I mean, it was going to impact the way we were hiring, et cetera, because.
Yeah, and we retroed back. I mean, we probably trained, I don't know, I've probably trained upwards of 4,000 or 5,000 people. That's how, and that doesn't even count global numbers, right? That's just in North America, but yeah.
So all of these things kind of came together. So as April got certified and she started doing it, and as we get in more, I started to go to watch her training, because she'd come back and tell the stories. It's like, well, there's no way that happened. And so then I ended up getting certified in DISC as well. And as we started, the more conversations we had, the more we started to think, well, this is similar to the scenarios that people are having issues inside of their marriages.
Right.
Like we started to see that, okay, wait a minute, beyond all of the maybe abusive or inappropriate behavior and the hurt and the mistrust that went on, there were some fundamental just differences between the two people.
Right. Well, we used it for premarital counseling, right?
Yeah.
So we do some premarital counseling, which I think is a place to start it, because now you kind of have some insight and visibility into what you're walking into, which is what you said earlier, James. Like, we only want to focus on our, where we're compatible. And I think it's really great to start out those conversations of, well, this is where you're the same, but these are where you're going to need strategies, because you guys don't think the same when it comes to these type of situations, right?
That's a word you use, April, that I really like, and I've noticed that early on, is the word strategies. Is having these strategies within your relationships on how that we can connect and honor one another and appreciate our differences. I mean, most people think that the way they do life is the best way, right?
Yeah.
And so
and James, that's only true in my circumstance.
Right. So, we all believe that, but it only is actually provably, we can prove it in your life that it's true.
That's right.
Well, and the other side is that you have another group of people who thinks that everything that they're doing is wrong. They're
Yes.
highly self-critical. So, you know, there's always kind of these two opposites pushing and, you know, pushing against each other. But yes, many people think that everyone thinks the way I'm thinking. And that's why you want that dream team around you, because that's what makes your families better. That's what makes your relationships better. That's what makes your companies better, is really looking at what everybody brings to the table and appreciating that. But the very first step, and what we have to work on with a lot of leaders and executives, the very first step is saying that it's okay to look at the fact that not everyone thinks the way you do. Like, that's step number one. Could you be willing to think about that maybe not everyone thinks that way? And
for some people, that's a mind bomb.
Yeah,
that is such a massive step to take, because that begins that whole self-awareness. And you know, what April mentioned, premarital conversations, which we had those, okay, but most of them were in marriages that were just literally on the brink. And so this is triage. I mean, this is people coming to you. I mean, you're lucky to get them both in the same room. And I mean, emotions are high. I mean, they're not holding they're not pulling punches. They're not holding back. And I mean, it's got to a really, really bad place. So we started to look for things. Okay, how do we just get these people talking? So as we started having the conversations from a business perspective around DISC, and so why is one person thinking this way and that other person, it's like they're speaking a foreign language, but it wasn't intentional. As we kind of translated that back into these marriage scenarios, there's a lot of behavior going on that was inappropriate and just had to be dealt with, okay? But there was a big chunk of this, James, as you know, as we talk in class, that this was just differences. And I would say, when you talk about compatibility, companionship and compatibility, I think of the word complementary. Right. That what they were missing, that what they once saw is now we are uncompatible. It really is no, you're actually complementary. And until you can embrace that, so we just were looking for things to start to put the fires out. We were looking for things to just start a conversation. And when we started talking about, wait a minute, this guy doesn't lay in bed for the first 10 minutes of every day when he wakes up, and he's not sitting there trying to figure out how he's going to specifically ruin your day. Now, some guys do that, but most of these guys, as we call them, kind of good-willed guys, they don't know how to do marriage right. They didn't have a good example. They were stubbing their toes right and left. But at the end of the day, they didn't hate their wife. They just needed help understanding how to be more sensitive and considerate of their wife, and the vice versa. You know, you get to a place where you just are convinced that other person is actually plotting and planning how to ruin every day that I have. So we just started to we started to recognize, well, wait a minute, these differences in selling types of the way people want to be spoken to, be bought, want to buy things, they want to have these conversations, even how you manage and lead people inside of your downline, inside of an organization. These differences that are being highlighted, man, we could take that same idea, bring it over into these marriage and relationship conversations, and it would really help get the focus off, I'm so mad, all I want is a divorce. So that's kind of the background of how all of this stuff came together. And so we just started saying, okay, what if we used a DISC assessment on a couple to try to get them to kind of see that? We did it, and it really, really was helpful.
Yeah, and good. That's great insight there, Darren. And I think even for I'm a sports guy, big into sports, as you are, Darren. And I think if we've got any coaches listening out there today, Lyndon, our with the difference, is a former coach. And if you're a coach of athletes, I think this is going to be very beneficial, because you've got these athletes that come from different backgrounds, have different styles, and if you coach all of them the same, you're not going to get the most out of each player. And I learned that personally when I was coaching football in a high school level for about 6 years. And even in youth football, I have to speak to each kid and reach them at their level. The standard can be the same for everyone. We've got a standard that's up here, but how to get them there and hold them there, you have to reach them and how God created them. And you can't just say, I'm going to coach everyone and how to motivate them, right?
Well, because look, here's a great example, James. Hey, if I see you miss that block one more time, I am benching you. Okay. Yep. To one type of player, that might be very, very motivating. And him saying, hey, you pulling me out of the game and benching me, that motivates me. You do that to another type of style or another type of player, it would destroy their confidence, and you may never get them back.
So, yeah, I had a guy that I coached the offensive line for 6 years, and I had a player that I never felt like I was getting the most out of him. And when I realized that raising my voice or trying to motivate him in a certain way was actually causing him to just crawl into a shell, I made a decision that I was going to approach him completely different than pretty much anybody else. And his senior year, he had an amazing year. He was one of our, guys that we could count on, and he finally reached his potential. And he went on to play college football. And a lot of it had to do with how he was raised, how he was coached previously, and he just didn't have a lot of confidence. And so I would go up and put my arm around him and give him the same words maybe that I was giving everyone else, but it was kind of more private and not calling him out in front of everyone. And it just changed everything. Well, but April, why don't you go ahead and kind of tell us about this? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's real easy. These 4 styles, I mean, we are all a mixture of all 4 styles. Every single person has all 4. These are not your personality. This is more just the way that we look at it is kind of the way that you like to work, the way that you approach work. So again, personality, there's a lot of layers to the onion, but this is just a really high level beginner entry into kind of what the 4 groups are, and then they can get even more detailed. But the first one in DISC, D-I-S-C, is dominance. And sometimes people look at that word and go, dominance, that seems negative. It's actually not. It means direct. It means driven. So those words, the things that a direct or a very driven person might kind of prioritize would be they're very kind of active, they're bold, they're fast-paced, they don't like to go slow. They tend to be, it's not even introvert extrovert because you can have both, but it's more of just very driven. They're very task focused. Then as you move across, it's kind of in a circle. So then as you go around to the I, this is influential people. So these would be kind of your happy-go-lucky. I know a lot of different people. I have a big network. I like to bring people together. Everything is about the people, right? So we're very focused on the people on the I side. Things I might.
These are the people who are at a party.
Yeah.
And they are thinking about what the next party they can go to is going to be.
Right.
Like they're not thinking about going home. They're looking for the next party.
Where's the next party? Yeah. I don't want to miss out on anything. And then as you come around the circle to the S, S kind of stands for stable, secure. Steady. These are the people who, steady. These are the people who are very, I call them the nurse sharks of humanity. They're built to support. They're built to help. They're really looking at the world of how can I come alongside you and help you. So they tend to go into a lot of service type jobs. And then on the last one, which is the C, that's conscientious critical thinker. So on this side, these are people who really see the world in a very different way. They tend to be very linear. Again, they're very focused on the task at hand. They tend to like math and high level academics, right? So there's obviously exceptions to all the rules, but those are kind of the four main areas. The C tends to be, I always like to use the word challenging. So for everyone who's listening, who is a C, they're sitting there going, this is so bogus. I don't, this, you can't put people in 4 boxes. And then I love that when C's come to our sessions, because they're the ones that tend to leave the most changed. And they implement it. And so, but they tend to challenge, they're very skeptical. The way that they look at things is, how is the world broken? And how does it need to be fixed? And so they're what I call kind of the world's editors. They're constantly editing of how things could be better. And so as you were saying before, where you have all these people who are kind of looking at, everything's great. This is how the world, everybody thinks like I do. If you look at the D and the I up top, those guys usually think that. When you come down to the bottom in that C and the S world, they tend to have a lot of negative internal speak. So the D and the I, they're saying, I am doing great. I am firing on all cylinders. This is so awesome. And you get down to the CSs and they're going, I totally jacked that up. Right. And so both are detrimental. And so that's why we want to spend a lot of time with our executives and managers and coaches and parents, trying to dial that in, right? And how do you control your own self-speak? And then how does that speak, once it's edited, come out of your mouth in the right way? And that sounds easy, but it's really hard. Yeah.
And to kind of build on what that foundation she's laying there is, so let's remember this, that just because you don't have a significant portion of one particular style, that doesn't mean you can't do it. Okay. So April and I are very, very unique as far as married couples goes, because our styles are actually very similar. Now, most people would look at that and go, oh gosh, I wish I wasn't married to kind of the opposite. I wish we were like you and Darren. Well, that sounds great, but we have our own set of issues that we have to work with because we're alike. There's positives and negatives to that. So my point is that just because you don't have a lot of the characteristics of one style doesn't mean you can't do it. So for instance, for me and April, us sitting out and filling out and setting up an Excel spreadsheet is not going to be our jam. Okay, we're not going to be loving that. That doesn't mean we can't do it. Okay, but what it does mean is it means that is going to be de-energizing to us. We can do it, but it's going to be really, really hard. So there's going to be people like April's talking about the C's, that you want to make sure you've got a C that is building and improving the bridges that you're driving on, right? When birds fly in to the engines of the plane that you just took off in New York City over, you want a C behind that wheel. And we haven't disc tested him, but Sully, I guarantee you, he had ice in his veins, and he problem solved so fast. And then he decided, I'm going to put this sucker in the Hudson. And so that's why it's really, really important for two things. Number one is that, Sully going to a party may be really, really de-energizing to him, but it doesn't mean he can't do it. And we can all get better at our weaknesses. We can all hone in and make more palatable our strengths with all of this awareness and practice. So
an easy way too, you might be listening going, well, I wonder what style I am. Like, how do I figure that out? There are assessments, but I can just quickly kind of give you a couple of words. You can kind of in your mind think about, okay, which one am I more of? So are you a more active, fast-paced person, or are you a more calm, thoughtful person? Okay. So think of kind of north, south, east, west. So if you're more active and fast paced, go north. If you're more calm and thoughtful, kind of methodical, go south. And we always get people who go, oh, I'm both. Okay, yes, we know, but just pick one. What's the one when you get out of bed that you would say you're the most of? Okay, so now let's think east-west. So are you more questioning, skeptical, challenging? That would be the west side. Or are you more accepting, agreeable, receptive? That'd be the east side. Okay, so are you more challenging or are you more accepting? Okay, so if you went, think of DISC. So D and I are up north and S and C are at the bottom. So if you said I'm more active and challenging, you would fall into the D category. If you said I'm more active and accepting and agreeable, you're probably an I, or you have some I. If you're more, say, thoughtful and calm and accepting, you sit in that S, stable, secure area. And then if you're more thoughtful and challenging, you tend to be on the C side. And so that gives you kind of a basic understanding of where you might fall. And then, what we teach is kind of understanding who you are, and then understanding who's on your team, who's in your family, who you work with, and then trying to figure out the strategies to communicate with them better.
Yeah, that is so fascinating. One thing that we learned in the class early on was, and I'll just give an example. If you're a D or an I and you go to a party, Sunday school party, Super Bowl party, whatever kind of social activity it is, you leave the party and you're energized. Right. And you mentioned this earlier, you're ready. Where's the next party? I want to go until I just can't go anymore. If you get down in the lower the South and you're a C, for example, which we learned from you guys, when you go to that party, it drains you. And as Darren famously said, we'll use the word famous there loosely, but I use this a lot, is he said C's are like an iPhone. They lose battery power. And so they have to go home after the party, plug in and recharge and pull back and get all the social stuff over with. They're done with that. And so if you're married to a C, you're thinking, you get home, now it's our time together. And they're going, oh, wait a minute, I'm drained. I'm out of here. I'm done. I need to just lay in the bed, read a book, or go to sleep. And you're going, well, wait a minute. I thought we had a great time at the party. And so if you don't know this about, so you're on the phone with your friends going, man, if you don't know this, and this is how it gets real in a marriage. If you don't know this, then you can take that personally. Right. You can think, well, they're upset with me. What did I say at the party? And then you sit there the next 20 minutes going, did I do something wrong? Did I say something did I embarrass you? And they're like, get out of my face. I'm just tired, and you can't relate to that. And so that's where knowledge becomes power in your relationships. And so that's, I think, something that we definitely want to do is give our audience more knowledge about themselves and the people they're in relationships with, and understand and not to take things so personally like that.
Exactly.
And James, you're dead on. And I think one thing to remember too is that, like, if you saw that C at the party, that doesn't mean they were just sitting over in the corner by themselves. I mean, one of the things April and I found so fascinating in all this is that a lot of musicians and performers and actors are actually C's.
Right.
And people who are very, very comfortable in front of people can be a C. But they're not, like, in their private life, they're actually very, very loners. Like, you can read about, like, Robin Williams, very, very troubled, kind of to himself guy. But no, you can't watch any of his professional work and come up with that conclusion. So, and it also means that those people who are going to the parties and all that stuff, it doesn't mean that they don't have a way for their iPhone to get drained down, right? And it is, you could be sitting around the house all morning just kind of reading a book or whatever, and you're a high energy person. That's how you get drained. That's how I might get drained. Right. Okay. Our energizing isn't to go alone. Our energizing is to go out and be with people. And this is really, really coming up as topics now out in the world because of COVID. All of these high I people that are energized by being around people, and you can't be around anyone.
Yeah, it's really hard. And at our work, we do a lot of like Zoom happy hours where people are, it's the best you can do, right? Where we're all kind of together like this and we're talking and things, but it's not quite the same. The other thing I thought I might touch on really quickly is we kind of talked about the styles, but I think it's interesting, especially since it's for businesses and things, to talk about kind of the fears of the different styles really quickly, because I think that that's interesting, especially as you look at how to incentivize people. So, you were talking about when you were coaching that kid, right? And you came at him in your style and what he was fearing. That's why he shut down. People shut down a lot of times because they fear something. And so I think that to me, this is one of the most important parts of it. And we can just touch on it and maybe break it into another session further down the road. But so let's take the D's. In its most simplistic form, D's hate to lose. So when I sell to a D, back when I used to sell, when I sell to a D, one of the ways that I sell to a D is I talk to them about their competition. And I talk to them about how their competition is beating them because of X, Y, and Z. You have to do your homework, right? But it's not manipulative, but it is what drives them. So it's saying, look, if I could get you this and this and this, you would be able to, sell more of this, which makes you beat your competition. Well, they're like, absolutely. That's what I want to do. And so losing for a D is really, it's at the core of like who they are as a human. And this is for men and women both. And so losing could be losing at relationships. It could be losing deals. It could be losing at whatever they decided they wanted to win at. Not what we decide they should be winning at, but what they decide is important. And if they decided that it was important and they weren't able to pull that off for whatever reason, it's when they lay their head on the pillow at night, it's what goes through their mind. And it very rarely leaves. So getting them into a position where they can strive and they can work and they can perform and they can use that drive to win is something that's really, really important. So let's go to the I's. So the fear for the I is really around this most simple way to say it is not being liked, right? Not being included, being left out. We always say FOMO, right? There's a party going on over here, or there's someone's having a conversation, something fun is happening or good is happening, and I'm not a part of that. Or my direct manager, for whatever reason, my coach, my spouse, my father, my whatever, doesn't like me. And so there's a lot of acceptance rejection that goes on with the I. And whereas a D couldn't care less, right? A D is like, if I like me, that's enough. But you start adding in, the I, and it does become a little bit more about the other people. So if you go down to the S side, what the S's have a lot of fear around letting people down. So if you were an S and I said to you, hey, you're the only guy who can get me through this, your number this month is going to make all of us as a team get XYZ. That guy or that woman isn't going to be able to sleep at night because they feel responsible. So there's a real fear of you depending upon them for fill in the blank and them not being able to do that in some way. All right. So then on the C side, the big fear for the C's is being wrong, just in general. So the being wrong and believing in something and it not panning out. So really a lot of change is difficult as well. So, but being wrong is a big one for C's. And again, if they were to create a document of some sort, an Excel spreadsheet, let's just say, and there was a bunch of math in it, and I came back and said, hey, this document that you gave me, I found 3 errors. They would be like, what? No, you didn't. No, I did. I found 3 errors. No, you did not find 3 errors. And it's really funny to see when I bring the C's up and I act that out, even though they haven't given me an Excel spreadsheet, they're still telling me there's no errors. Just even talking about the imaginary one, which is really funny. There's what?
If we went out to the millions of people that we know,
yeah.
And we got all the D's to say, I want you to throw up on the chat, okay, the comments. What did April say was, how did she describe the I's, the S's, and the C's? Not one D would be able to answer that, because once they heard about the D, they heard about them.
Forget it.
Tuned out. They tuned out. So I think it's really important. So give me a couple of quick examples as April was explaining this came to mind. This stuff is really important because when you're talking to D, you've got to be speaking to and about them basically in some way or another, and there has to be bullet points. Okay, D's the most important thing to a D is their time. So when you're talking to a D, you start telling a story or you start, chasing a rabbit. The first thing a D is going to do is look at his watch, or now maybe he's like holds up his phone and looks at his phone.
Right, but a D can chase a rabbit.
Yeah, they can chase the rabbit, but you're not going to make them chase a rabbit unless they want to.
Right.
And the I thought, as she was talking about that, she thought they want to be. So this is totally hypothetical. This isn't a real story. Completely hypothetical. But an I, Jane, might be the kind of person that you could be walking down a mall with, and they see a group of people gathered over someplace, and that I has to go over there and figure out why are those group of people. Now, it could be something really cool. It could be kids breakdancing, or
it could be having fun.
But it is like a moth to a flame. That I wants to go over and see what's going on.
So is everyone tapping into their eyes when they're going down the tollway and there's a wreck on the other side? All of a sudden, the onlookers, the rubberneckers, they've tapped into their eye, right?
Well, the D's trying to figure out, is that Joe from accounting that I'm going to beat to work because he got in a wreck?
Exactly.
The I's want to make sure there's not a party. They're handing out free tacos, and I want to get in. The S is because they just feel so bad, and the C's trying to realize what kind of car that is unsafe and unpredictable did that guy buy that they would never have bought because they would have done their homework in Buffalo.
Right.
Well, I hate to do this, but I knew when we, decided that we were going to do this show that this was going to be one of our biggest challenges. We're cutting short today a little bit by about 5 or 10 minutes. Going forward, we'll hopefully give you the best hour of your week. But today we're a little short on an hour for some production issues with the difference. But it's okay. There's going to be another great show after ours. But I knew we'd run into this, and that is we wouldn't be able to get everything talked about today that we wanted to. But I think that's a good thing, because what do they say in show business? You're supposed to leave your audience wanting more. And I can tell you there's a lot more to be discussed here. Darren and April, we're just scratching the surface. Yeah. And so we just want to thank you for tuning in today to our pilot show. Join us weekly on Tuesdays at 1:00, and we want to bring deep content to you. We want to go, we want to get below the surface of what's going on in our world and what's going on in our relationships, and really move you into a different place in a positive direction with moving conversations. So on behalf of Darren and April and Lyndon with The Difference, thank you, and look forward to seeing everyone next week. And tell your friends about us, all right? Thank you.